Welcome back. In this video I'm going to add take profit and stop loss capability to the examples that we created earlier using the framework. I'm going to be showing both simple take profit and stop loss using fixed take profit stop loss point values and also a calculated take profit stop loss, and in this case I'm going to use a multiple of ATR. If you haven't seen the earlier parts of the framework, you might want to watch the earlier videos and there'll be a link in the description to that. As part of this video, I'm also updating the framework from version 2.0 to 2.01. There will be a link in the description below where you can download that from the Orchard Forex website. So having said that, I'll be right back and we can get started. I'm going to be modifying the framework, so first thing I want to do is create a new version. Easiest way to do that, I'm going to the navigator here in the meta editor, right click on the frameworks folder and select open folder. That opens the Windows Explorer. You can see here I have frameworks 1 and 2. I'm just going to copy this framework underscore 2.00 and change the name to 2.01. If I close that, come back to meta editor and hit refresh. There's framework 2.01. Now I just modified this framework file which points to the latest version. I need to update that to point to version 2.01. And then inside the framework 2.01, there's the framework file that came across with copying. I need to update the version in here. And I'm also going to add a history comment in here. So we're now at version 2.01, and in this I'm adding take profit and stop loss capabilities. Now since I'm adding take profit and stop loss, I'm going to add a take profit stop loss base class. First I'll just go here and create a new folder, which I'll just call TPSL. And then I need to create a new file in here. I'm going to do that by copying the signal base class rather than go through the wizard. So I just copy that in here. And part of that is because the take profit stop loss base class is very similar to the signal base class. So I've just copied the signal base class. I'll just change the name. And now I can just go in here and modify. And in fact, this is so similar that I'm not going to be inheriting from common base as signal base does. I'm actually going to inherit from signal base. So first I'll just change the comment. And now I'll just do a global replace of signal base to TPSL base. And then I change the inheritance here to C signal base. And then I also need to obviously include the C signal base and remove this enum that is in the parent class. Now there are a few things I can cut out of here. I don't need these enumerators for entry and exit signals. And because I'm inheriting from signal base, I don't need to store the list of indicator items. That's already handled by signal base. So I can get rid of all of that. For my constructors, I'm just going to reformat this a little. Right, so I just reformatted that so that everything fits on the screen. I have the default constructor, which simply calls the base class, C signal base. I have then the constructor where I'm passing in a symbol and time frame, which also calls the constructor from signal base, passing the symbol and time frame. And then of course I've got the destructor where nothing to do at the moment. And then each of these are calling an init function. I don't have anything to do in the init function, but this is the way I build these structures so that I can easily expand them later. And as with the earlier examples, I won't be using this constructor that takes the symbol and time frame argument, but I always create them. And then I don't need any of these functions. They are in the base class, the signal base class, but I don't need them here. I don't need to override them. So I'm just going to remove those. I can also remove the add indicator because that's going to be handled by the base class, the C signal base. And I can remove the get indicator data function. But Because the functioning of take profit stop loss is different to signal base, I need to add two new functions. They both return doubles. One is the get take profit and the other is the get stop loss. So these will return the size of the take profit amount and the size of the stop loss. And since this is the base class, I'm just returning a default value of 0 in case these are not overridden by the child classes. And then the init function, as I said, there's nothing that I need to do here. I'll just delete these two lines that are left over from the signal base class where I copied this. And I don't need the implementation of add indicator here or get indicator data. So that's the take profit stop loss base class. And as I have done with signals, for example, I created this signals.mqh. It does nothing but include the signal base. I have it there so that later I can include perhaps other variations on the base class, and I just need to add them in here. So I'm going to just duplicate that also into take profit stop loss and just modify this line. So I won't be directly including the TPSL base from the framework. I include the TPSL file. So I'll just go back to the framework here. Just as I did here, I included signals. I'll now include tpsl.mqh. And just check that I haven't got a syntax error there. So the child classes that inherit from TPSL base just need to implement the get take profit and the get stop loss methods to return these values, or leave them as 0 if there is no take profit or stop loss for that particular implementation. The biggest change in the framework is going to come from the expert base class. Let me open that. First thing I need to do is add in the take profit stop loss. And now I need to do something similar to the signal base where we held two objects of type signal base. But I also want to be able to cope with simple take profit and stop loss where a number is just supplied. So I'm actually going to create 4 variables here. So the first two, in case you intend to use the expert base by simply supplying a take profit value, I've got a double value for take profit value and a double for stop loss value. And then in cases where you're going to be using the take profit stop loss as an object, I have objects of type C take profit stop loss base, and they will store the take profit object and the stop loss object, the same as the signal base stores the entry signal and the exit signal. In the examples I'll be showing both of these because I'm going to show an example of a simple expert advisor that simply hands in a fixed profit and loss value, and another one that uses the ATR to calculate take profit and stop loss. Now I need to be able to set these values. Now these are simple single line functions, so I'm putting the implementation of the function here in with the declaration. So I have a set take profit value, which is taking an integer value of take profit points, and in this case I'm using points as they're defined by the point function in MetaTrader. So this will be an integer value, and I'll convert it to a double using the points to double function, and I'm just storing that in the take profit value. And in cases where an object is supplied, I then have the take profit obj, which takes a variable of type take profit or of type take profit stop loss base, and then assigns that to the take profit obj. And here are the same things for the stop loss. Set the stop loss value and set the stop loss object. Here in the init section, I'm going to initialize the take profit value and the stop loss value to 0. So here in the trade open section, this is where I need to use the take profit and stop loss values. At the moment, I'm just calling the buy and sell functions, and I'm using the format of this where I'm simply passing the volume and the symbol, because I'm defaulting the take profit and stop loss to 0. But if I'm going to use the take profit and stop loss, I'll need to calculate those values before I pass this in. I don't like to clutter up these kind of functions with a lot of calculations, so I'm going to create a separate function that gets me the current market price, the stop loss, and the take profit values. The reason I'm getting the current market price is that when I call this buy and sell function and pass in the take profit and stop loss, they have to be passed in as prices, not by distances from the price. So I also need to calculate the current price that I'm going to be trading at, and then I can add and subtract the take profit and stop loss. Now, the function to calculate this will be returning then three values: the price, the take profit, and the stop loss. And I'm going to leverage a structure that has appeared in MT5 but doesn't occur in MQL4. And that's caused a certain amount of incompatibility, which is not difficult to work around, but I'm actually going to now define the structure here. So here is the structure, and I'm putting the if-def MQL4 because this structure MQL trade request already exists in MQL5. And you can find this, if you have MQL5, you can find this in the help file for MQL5, or you can simply use this from the framework. Some of these, like the action, were an enumerator in the MQL5 version. Those enumerators aren't defined in MQL4, and I don't need them, so I'm simply declaring them as an integer, and I've put a little comment as int here. So that defines this trade request, and I'm using that because it holds a price, a stop loss, and a take profit, and I can use this for other things later as well. So with that structure defined, I'm going to now define a function that I'm going to call getMarketPrices. I'm simply passing in the order type, whether that's buy or sell, and I'm passing in a structure of type MQL trade request. So the function will fill in the values in this request. Now to put that function in, getMarketPrices function, order type, and an MQL trade request. First, I want to capture a simple variable, or two of them, a stop loss and a take profit, that give me the size of the stop loss or take profit. So the first test, if the stop loss object is null, so if that hasn't been set, then I'm going to use the stop loss value. And the stop loss value, if that also hasn't been set, is going to be 0. So the ultimate default is a 0 value. If the stop loss object has been set, then I'm calling the getStopLoss function of that. And exactly the same thing for take profit. Once I have those two values, if the order type is a buy, then I'm interrogating the request structure for its price. If that price is 0, meaning I haven't set a price yet, then I'm setting the request price to symbol info double ask. Once I have that price, then I can set the take profit value of the request. And I'm saying if this take profit value from above is 0, means we don't want to take profit, then I'm setting the take profit value of the request to 0. So if you issue a buy trade and set the take profit to 0, you get no take profit. And if the take profit value calculated above is not 0, then I'm simply calling normalized double using the request price, adding that take profit value, and the normalized doubles using the M digits, which is set in the common base class. And then stop loss is exactly the same, but testing the stop loss values. And then the order type cell, I'm using the symbol bid price instead of the ask price, and instead of plus TP, it's minus TP and plus SL. So at the end of this, the request structure has price, take profit, and stop loss set if they need to be set. And now that I've created that getMarketPrices function, I'm going to create a variable of type MQL trade request here. So type MQL trade request, my variable name is request, and you'll see here that I'm initializing it to bracket 0 bracket. Structures are just space in memory. If they are not initialized, then all of the values inside that structure will contain whatever value was in that piece of memory to start with. So whenever you are creating a variable of a type of a structure, you should always initialize it. I only need to fill in the single value here, and that will initialize the entire structure to default values. But without that, it would just have garbage inside the request variable. I'm not going to set an entry price. I'm going to leave that as 0 inside this request. Then in this case where I'm going to trade both, Just insert a blank line to make this a little easier. I'll call the get market prices function order type buy, passing in that request. And I'll replace the trade buy statement that just took volume and symbol. And now I'm adding request price, stop loss, and take profit, extra arguments to that same function. And then I'll do the same for sell, passing in an order type sell. And then all I need in the other sections, I'll just copy that for the buy condition. And I'll copy this for the sell condition. So by doing that, if you've configured the expert base object by passing in a take profit stop loss object for either the take profit or the stop loss, and I have allowed you to pass in one for each so they can have different rules, then the trades will be set using the take profit and stop loss from those objects. If you haven't set the objects, then the trades will be set with the take profit and stop loss values that you've added directly. And if you simply don't set those, then the trades will be set with 0 stop loss and 0 take profit, meaning effectively there is no stop loss or take profit. And because I'm going to be creating an ATR based take profit and stop loss, I'm going to create another indicator. Where previously I've got an example here, indicator MA, now I need an indicator ATR. And I'm just going to duplicate this as an easy way of getting started. After using the indicator MA as a template, just make a few changes. I'll do a global replace of C indicator MA for C indicator ATR. The ATR does not use shift method and applied price, so I can simply delete those. And the same in the constructors, I don't need shift method and applied price, so let me just replace these. So the only value I need to pass in here is the number of periods to be used in the ATR calculation. And as usual, I have a constructor that also takes symbol and time frame, although I won't be using that. The init method doesn't need to take all the extra arguments. And then I can update the init function. Again, just takes one argument now. And I can remove these 3 values. Now here in this section for MQL5, I obviously need to replace the IMA with the IATR. But as I was doing this, I realized that this will be a very common thing in these indicator classes, setting a handle value, and also in the destructor where I'm releasing the handle. As I like to have common functions in a common place, I thought it would be a good idea to move that into the base class. So if we scroll back to the beginning here, only used for MQL5 mHandle. I've obviously already got a class out there, the indicator MA, that uses this value, so I can't simply move that variable into the base class without breaking that earlier indicator MA. So I'm going to remove it from here. I'm going to go into the base class for indicators, and in the protected member variables I'm going to create this int m indicator handle. So I've changed the name here by adding indicator there. That way this variable name will not conflict with the variable name mHandle that was used in the earlier indicator MA. Now it's probably overkill because I only have this one class and I can easily update that, and in fact in the framework I will update it, but this is just demonstrating how I'm taking care of handling the compatibility issues that might come up. So I've created the variable there. The destructor in the base class originally had no code. I'm changing that. So now I do have a destructor code, but there's only going to be code if this is a type MQL5. And I'm simply saying if m indicator handle is not equal to invalid handle, then I'll release the handle just to make sure that it is invalid in case the handle hasn't been used. I'm also going to initialize that in the init section here by setting m indicator handle to the invalid handle. So that's removed a certain amount of functionality back into the base class. If I go back to the indicator ATR, I've already removed the handle from there. In the destructor now I don't need these statements which came across from the indicator MA because that's handled in the base class. And now in this section where I'm initializing the indicator handle, so if it's an MQL5 type, the indicators work by creating handles. I'm just going to update this. So M indicator handle is IATR, and there are only 3 arguments to the IATR function for MQL5, the symbol and the time frame, and these variables are coming from the base class, the common base class, and the number of periods which we've passed in above. And then the standard test: if the indicator handle is an invalid handle, then I'm returning an initialization error. In the getData function for the MQL4 section, I'm replacing the value IMA with the ATR function, and that takes a symbol, a time frame, the number of periods for calculating the ATR, and the index, which is the bar number that I want to get the value back for. In this MQL5 section, the only change I need to make here is to change this handle to the new variable name indicator handle. All the rest of that code will work for both the ATR or the MA. Okay, so now I have an indicator ATR. I need to create the take profit stop loss class. The last piece of the puzzle before we actually create an EA will be to create an instance of that TPSL class, a child that inherits from that. So first I'm just going to create a folder here in the extensions. And then I'm just going to copy the signal crossover as a starter. And this is going to be a very simple TPSL. It's simply going to take the value from the indicator that's handed to it, multiply it by some factor, and just return that as the take profit or the stop loss. Right, now I've opened up that TPSL simple file. The include statement's the same as for the signal classes. I've changed the class name and the parent class name. First, there are 2 values that it needs. I'll just create those. So I'm going to need a multiplier. So whatever value the indicator that's handed in here generates, it will be multiplied by this number. Then I need an index because I need to know which value from the indicator to get which bar number. The constructors and destructors are very simple. First, there's the default constructor taking no arguments, and then, as usual, the constructor taking a symbol and time frame. They both call the init method. There are no arguments to pass to the init method, but it does initialize some variables, so we'll get to that in a moment. Now, I haven't created a constructor that takes any of the values, the index or the multiplier. What I plan to do with this class is set those after the object is created. So I have a setIndex method, which just takes an integer value and saves that to the mindex, and then of course there's a getIndex to return that value. And then I also have the setMultiplier and getMultiplier doing the same thing, but this time with the multiplier value. And then the base class has 2 methods, getTakeProfit and getStopLoss. I need to implement those in the child class here, but since I'm going to return the same value from each of them, I don't want to write the code twice. I'm simply going to call a getValue function, and I'll just declare that now as a private function. It will return the same value for the take profit or the stop loss. So I'll make this a private method. Now to the implementation of these, first there's the init method, and I'm just setting the multiplier to 1 and the index number to 1. And then the getValue method, which will return the same value for the take profit or the stop loss call, simply returning a double value using the getIndicatorData method that is in the parent class. It's actually in the signal parent class, but we've inherited through the TPSL base class to the signal base class. And that getIndicatorData, I'm looking at indicator number 0 because I expect only one indicator to be used in this particular simple TPSL, using the index number that's stored and then multiplying that by the multiplier. With the 2 new extensions created, so the indicator ATR and the TPSL simple both created, I need to update these include files to bring in the new indicator and also to create one for the TPSL. And if you remember from the earlier video, there's actually a utility included here. So if I just open the frameworks, right click, open folder, there is this make extension mqh.bat file included in the frameworks directory. And if I run that, it will create a new file for TPSL, and it will also update the all indicators file to add in the indicator MA. All indicators currently has only the indicator MA. Now I'll run the make extension MQH, and you can see here it's updated all indicators, all signals, and it's created the all TPSL, which wasn't there before, and then it's also updated all extensions, so that will now include the all TPSL file. And I just refresh this, so now you can see there's an all TPSL file, and if I open up all indicators, it has both indicators now, and the all TPSL has the TPSL simple, and the all extensions now includes the all TPSL. So at this point, I've updated the framework. I've created the extensions that I need to do take profit and stop loss, and now I'm going to actually write the two expert advisors. First, I'm going to create the simple take profit stop loss, and I'm going to use the MA crossover. So I'm just going to copy this and build on the MA cross by adding the take profit and stop loss to that. Now I've just copied the original MA crossover into the MA crossover simple, and I'm only going to do the MQ4 version because the changes for the MQ5 are the same. All of the inputs for the moving average won't change because we're still using the same moving average method. Now I'm taking an input though of two integer values, one for the take profit points and one for the stop loss points. And then for simple take profit stop loss, all I need to do is assign those values to the expert. So I'll do that here after I've finished with the entry and exit signals. All I'm doing is set take profit value for the take profit points and set stop loss value for the stop loss points. And that's all that is needed for the simple take profit and stop loss. Let me just compile, make sure I haven't made any simple errors. Right. So now let's move on and look at the ATR version. I'll do the same thing again. I'll just copy the MA crossover into an MA crossover ATR TPSL. So here again, I've started with a copy of MA crossover, and this is going to be based on the ATR take profit stop loss. And you can mix a fixed take profit and an object stop loss, or an object take profit and a fixed stop loss. There's no reason why you can't do that. Now, the inputs will be a little different because we don't just have fixed point values. Instead, I want to know the number of periods to calculate the ATR, and then I need the multiplier to multiply the size of the ATR. I can remove this exit signal that I had earlier. You'll remember that I'm using the same signal for entry and exit, but I'll add in now the definition of CTPSL simple. So this is my child class for take profit. You should use the child class name because you'll be calling methods to set values in this class, and those methods are not all going to be in the base class. So I've just declared one variable called TPSL, and that object is going to need an input of an indicator, which would be the ATR indicator. So I'm going to declare an indicator C indicator ATR, which is my indicator ATR. And then I need to assign that to the expert. So let me, again, in the same place, after I've set up the entry and exit signals, there are a number of steps. First, I need to create an instance of the CTPSL simple class, and that's my TPSL variable. I need to create an instance of the indicator ATR, and that has the one argument of ATR periods. Then I need to add that indicator to the TPSL object. So calling add indicator, indicator ATR, buffer number 0, because it only has one buffer. For my take profit stop loss simple method, I'm going to be looking at bar number 1, which is the bar that's closed. Bar number 0 is the currently open bar. So I want to get the ATR from the closed bar, because ATR from the current bar will continue to vary. I'm setting my multiplier according to the input, and then I'm going to use the same take profit stop loss for the take profit and the stop loss values, so there'll be a 1-to-1. So I'm just assigning the same object to both of those. And then after that, in the exit, I need to remove the take profit stop loss object or objects and the indicators that were assigned to them. So I'll just call delete statements for those. Just quickly compile to make sure Sorry, that should have been set take profit obj and set stop loss obj. And as I said, the changes I've made here to the MQ4 version are the same changes you would make to the MQ5 version, because we've handled all the differences between MT4 and MT5 in the framework. So a quick wrap up here. I've updated the framework, and I simply took a copy of framework 2 into 2.01, updated this framework.mqh file to point to 2.01, and modified this file inside the framework to have the correct framework version number. I've also added in the include statement for the take profit stop loss base file. I created a folder for take profit stop loss classes. There is a take profit stop loss.mqh file which simply includes the TPSL base file. I keep this because I may add variations on these base files later, but at the moment it just has a single include statement to bring in that base class. The take profit stop loss base class inherits from the signal base class because it's very similar and uses a number of the same functions. But its primary purpose is to provide the take profit and the stop loss value. And then there have been extensive changes in the expert base class to allow setting of either take profit value and stop loss value, or take profit object and stop loss object. So with all of that done, the take profit stop loss base class and any children that inherit from this work in a very similar way to the signal base class. You create an instance of the take profit stop loss and then assign the indicators to that will give the values. And then I went through the extensions and created a new extension, the indicator ATR extension, and I created the TPSL simple extension. And I'm going to include the TPSL simple and the indicator ATR in the download. They don't strictly form part of the framework because they are extensions, but I'll leave them in there as an example, as a starter for writing further EAs. And then of course we updated these all extensions, all indicators, by using the BAT file that's included in the framework folder. After all the framework and extension updates are done, and that does seem like a lot of work, but as you move on through these and you do the work on the framework, you'll find that creating new EAs becomes easier and easier. After doing all of that, we've then been able to create the simple take profit stop loss EA and the crossover ATR EA, and both of those created very quickly just by calling the functions in those classes in the framework. So I hope this has been useful to you. As I said at the beginning, you may want to review the first 3 parts of this series where I built the framework initially. And there is a playlist that shows everything in this series, and there is a link to that in the description. If you're finding this useful, please leave a like. If there's anything that you're not following or would just like us to investigate more deeply, leave a comment. Or even if you just like what we're doing, leave a comment. And if you would like to see more of these videos, remember to click the subscribe button, and if you click the bell icon, you'll be notified the next time we release a video. So until next time, thank you for watching.